Hello, and welcome to the podcast that must not be named. I am Luke.
I am Melissa.
Question mark.
Yep.
We are doing Chapter 5, The Dementor. This chapter is 27 pages. What a beast. And that is 8.74% of this book. And now, a voice of the Imaginary Legion.
Heading back to Hogwarts today, Harry, Hermione, and the Weasleys spend a rushed morning at the Leaky Cauldron. Ron is eager to get away from Percy and his angry girlfriend picture. 2 ministry cars with drivers escort them to King's Crossing without incident. Saying their goodbyes on the platform, Mr. Weasley pulls Harry aside to talk. Harry stops him because he already knows. Mr. Weasley asks him to promise he will not go looking for Black. Aboard the train, Harry looks for a private place so he can update Ron and Hermione on the new information. They talk in an almost empty compartment, aside from a sleeping R.J. Lupin, who is presumed to be the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. After Harry gets through the details, both Ron and Hermione are worried, but their concerns are interrupted by a whistling sneakoscope, which they try to silence. Professor Lupin proved to be a very deep sleeper, and having a teacher in their compartment seemed to have an upside. The train makes an unplanned stop. Confused students try to figure out what is going on, waking up Professor Lupin. The door to the compartment is opened by a hooded figure. As the creature drew in breath, an intense cold feeling rushed over Harry. He heard a horrible scream, then Hermione calling his name, explaining that it was a Dementor from Azkaban prison. Lupin hands out chocolate and then goes to speak with the driver. Wondering what had happened, Ginny, Neville, Ron, and Hermione explained to Harry he had passed out, and while the rest of them had not, they did feel the adverse effect of the Dementor's presence. It was freezing at Hogsmeade Station, where they got into stagecoaches pulled by invisible horses to take them to the castle. Professor McGonagall takes Harry and Hermione to her office. To Harry's displeasure, he's checked over by Madame Pomfrey. Harry waits on Professor McGonagall and Hermione before heading back to the feast. They join Ron at the table, but have missed the sorting. Professor Dumbledore delivers a welcome speech, during which he tells the students that the Dementors will be stationed around the school, by order of the Ministry. He continues to introduce this year's new teachers, Professor Lupin teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts, and Hagrid teaching Care of Magical Creatures. After enjoying the feast, Harry, Ron, and Hermione congratulate Hagrid on his promotion, before heading up to Gryffindor Tower. In the dormitory, Harry feels glad to be home.
So, in this chapter, we have a couple of new character introductions again. Beginning of the book seem to have several new characters introduced on average at this point. So that's good. The first one we meet is, well, we don't meet him right away, but it's Professor R.J. Lupin. You know, shabbily dressed, taking a nap on the train.
Right.
We then go ahead and meet a Dementor who, enters the train coach, and also a mention of the former Care of Magical Creatures teacher, Professor Kettleburn.
We are given one new location, Dervish and Bangs, the location in Hogsmeade.
Yeah, so this was actually the one that I mentioned last chapter, that while listening to it, the narrator, Jim Dale, pronounces it a lot different than I would. He pronounces it Dervish and Bangees, and it really threw me off. I can see where it's coming from, but I don't like it. I'm not changing it in my head.
Because in your head it's still Dervish and Bangs?
Dervish and Bangs, because it's like a joke shop. I mean, like things are exploding. I think that's funny.
Except it's spelled with an E after the G, which does tend to change the sound of the G. So
I guess I get where he's coming from. I'm not changing it in my head canon.
Okay, so we're going to go back to pronunciation.
Right. Yeah, it's a stickler. Did you catch any magicabulary of this chapter?
Well, I would like to propose that the word Dementor is also a magicabulary.
Yeah, I definitely was on the fence on that one.
Because up until this chapter, we were told, the guards at Azkaban. So I feel like we got it as a vocabulary word. Mm-hmm. And then a sighting. I don't really want to say a meeting, a sighting, an encounter.
Encounter, yeah.
Yes.
I agree. I was definitely on the fence of, hey, is this a character or is this a magicabulary? And I agree that it should go in both in this case, because we did meet one, and it is a JK, created noun. It's in the vernacular.
That's right. It's a thing, a being thing.
So some other Magicabulary that I saw were the book called Sites of Historical Sorcery and the 1612 Goblin Rebellion.
We also got, you know what? There's a location that we didn't mention.
We miss one?
The Shrieking Shack.
The Shrieking Shack. Yep, I didn't have that on the list. Good call.
Yeah. We should. Pretty sure it's a Dementor, right?
I gotta open it up.
Definitely not Professor Kettleburn. It's something in what looks like a cloth version of a decrepit pumpkin. I don't really know. Yeah,
I think this is definitely a Dementor. You see its shadow on the wall, I guess. And it definitely seems to be floating, and yeah, looks a lot like maybe a ring wraith, kind of.
That's
from Lord of the Rings.
What I was going to say.
Quite inspired, maybe.
This is one of the few things. So I was a Lord of the Rings fan prior to becoming a Harry Potter fan.
Right.
And this was one of the few things when I was reading the book and then when I saw the movies that I felt was genuinely lifted straight from Lord of the Rings. And it bothered me slightly at the time because it felt so
heavy-handed,
intellectual property.
Gotcha. Okay.
Of Tolkien. And the older I get, the less I care about it. The more I'm like, look at her paying, I'm going to say the word wrong, homage or homage, like to Tolkien by creating something that is, at least to me, apparently inspired by him.
But I think she's definitely made it her own. You know, they definitely seem to act very differently, and the mechanics of them seem to be quite different. But
they're all evil.
Yeah, evil is as evil does.
So my point was just when I started this, I was a Tolkienite, and it hurt me a little bit. This one,
I think there's one more in this book that probably stands out as another one that we'll get to much later in the book. We'll get there.
All right. So, Luke, let's get into what were some of your big thoughts on this?
So, my first thought is when Mr. Weasley is, talking to Harry right before they get on the train, and he's like, Harry, I knew you were, made of stronger stuff than Fudge seems to think, and I'm obviously pleased that you're not scared, but... And then they get cut off because it's like, the train's leaving. I like that Arthur told him. I know we kind of touched on this last chapter. I think Harry should have the information that he needs to keep himself safe. And I like that Arthur has that vote of confidence in Harry.
I agree. However, I am concerned about what information Harry has, because Harry tells Mr. Weasley, oh, I overheard you and Mrs. Weasley talking. You don't have to tell me. You don't have to break your promise, Fudge. But Arthur doesn't know how much or how little of that Harry heard. And I feel like if Harry hadn't cut Arthur off, there might have been more information given from Arthur to Harry, or less, or some interpretation. I feel like there was something missing in that conversation.
Okay.
A piece, and I don't know what it is, but some piece of information that Arthur may have been able to provide to Harry that we don't get because Harry just assumes he already knows.
He already heard the whole conversation, so there couldn't possibly be anything else for him to tell me.
Right. That's just my hesitation with it. I'm glad he knows. I just wish that he had heard it directly from Arthur to him, to hear the version or the details Arthur thought was important for him to know.
Yeah, I agree. And right after that, we have the whole line of Mr. Weasley trying to have Harry promise him that he won't go looking for him. And, Harry never actually promises anything. He just says, why would I go looking for someone who wants to try to kill me? And leaves it at that. And then, choo choo, the train is going away. I promise, because I'm 100 yards away now.
I gotta get on the train.
He was already on. He was talking through the window.
True. Hey, speaking of the train, can we just be excited that Harry successfully and stealthily made it onto platform 9 3/4 without any incident?
Yeah, I think this is the first, right?
Right, because the first time it was, I don't know how to do this, and I'm very nervous, and you take it in a run, and I have to talk to these strangers, and the second time it didn't work at all. So I'm glad he's able to be a normal wizard in this moment.
Yeah, stuff like that is almost old hat for him now.
Sort of, except he's only done it once.
Right.
Hey, also early on in this book, at one point, I think it was the morning they were all having breakfast, and it said Hermione and Ginny and Mrs. Weasley were all giggling over an old story of Mrs. Weasley's about a time she had made a love potion. All right, so Mrs. Weasley apparently knows how to concoct love potions.
Yeah.
I want to know who her target was.
I think that's a good question.
I like in my head, I would hope it wasn't Arthur. I hope it was some other boy that she had her sights set on early on in schooling.
Right. Or just like kind of a funny Valentine's joke or something. Obviously, well, maybe it didn't work out. Maybe it was Arthur. I don't know. But
yeah, I don't know either.
But maybe that's sometimes you just
I would
go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I don't know if that's something I would tell my daughters, though, that I know how to do that.
Unless there was more story to it, like, all the girls in our class did it, and I did it too, and that was just funny and fun, and it was just something we did.
Maybe.
But if
anybody's going to figure out how to do it, it would be Hermione.
Well, yeah, I'm sure she's already read that book. I was thinking, if it was Arthur, I mean, clearly they seem to be in love nowadays. I think we've seen indications that, yeah, they're happily married and all of that. They have 100 kids.
7.
107 kids. And, maybe sometimes it just takes that initial spark to get a little bit of a boost. Maybe it's not anything manipulative, really.
Or I want to go with it's a different guy.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Or maybe it was a guy for a friend.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, she just mixed it up.
Right. Alrighty. So they get on the train and there's that random adult.
Yeah, right.
I like that the boys are like, who is this? And Hermione's like, Professor R.J. Lupin. They're like,
how does she know everything?
She knows everything. And she's like, I read it on this briefcase. Like, dude, read. Right there. Literally read. It's right there. You don't have to open the book. I relate to that because it happens to me so often. Well, how do you do this? And I just point right there. It's right there.
You see right here where the answer is? Let's start there.
I mean, it's like when I send my kids, hey, I need you to go find the blue pair of socks. Mom, I can't find the blue pair of socks. It's not right here on the top of the sock drawer. Did you look under the other sock? Like, once I sent my kid to something, she's like, it's not here. I'm like, literally turn 180 degrees. Just spin in your spot. And things like that drive me crazy. So I feel for Hermione in that moment. Like, yes, it's like, oh, you're so magic. No, honey, I can just read.
Yeah, I don't think she was miffed by it or anything. She's just used to it at this point, I think.
Or it's only been 2 years of it.
Yeah.
Wait till it's 50.
Yeah, definitely. So right when they get on the train, before we even meet him, this is just a real quick comment. Mm-hmm. Ron's a total jerk to Ginny. Like, he just says, "Go away, Ginny," said Ron. "Oh, that's nice," said Ginny huffily, and she stalked off. Like, what's the deal? Why you gotta be a jerk?
He is so mean to her.
Yeah, I don't know. Not unnecessary, I think.
I agree. One should always be nice to their sisters.
Next comment.
One should always be nice to their sisters. Sisters are lovely people.
So my next comment is the introduction of Hogsmeade. Well, not the introduction, but the discussion of what it actually is. And, it leads off with, "Do you know much about Hogsmeade?" asked Hermione keenly. "I've read it's the only entirely non-Muggle settlement in Britain." I think that's the first indication we've had of what kind of magical population presence there actually is and how maybe scarce or sparse it is in the country. We haven't seen a whole lot of students overall. We could tell it's a big castle and all that, but it seems to be a pretty small overall population.
Right, compared to the population of the country at large.
Right.
I like the idea, though, of a non-Muggle settlement, like a safe place to be.
Right.
Like Hagrid, I don't think could necessarily function out in normal Muggle world, even if he had like coping strategies for things, which according to book 1, he did not. Like he didn't know about,
right.
What was it, escapades or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was more like his size just would make him unable to fit in.
Yeah,
but in a non-Muggle community, he could have a place. And I bet there's a lot of people like that who stand out because of their wizardness.
Mm-hmm. So peculiar that you just can't hide the magic eking out of them, almost. Because we've seen how much Harry struggled with that before he found out. And it seems like that's a fairly common thing with the magical accidents, brigade that we heard about 2 chapters ago at this point. Oh, right. One that Fudge was talking about. The Accidental Magic Reversal Squad. Yes. So that seems to be a fairly common thing that, hey, sometimes magic just explodes on you. What can you do?
Okay, so on the train, we have a requisite run-in with Draco.
Yeah, that was a little cleaner this time.
Well, because there was a grown-up.
Right.
Silly Draco. That's my only thought on that.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot other than it was a real quick reintroduction, and the exposition on that was very minimal. It just gave a couple of quick descriptions of those three characters, and that was it, which was nice. We didn't have, and they've been, I mean, they didn't mention they've been enemies since they were on the train the first time, but like other than that, it wasn't like, and all of this other nonsense that means nothing to the story right now. It's right. I can't get over how much better it's gotten, even from book 2, the exposition piece.
Which is great.
Yeah.
However, let's talk about something even better than that.
Okay.
The scene where Ginny and Neville come into the compartment at the same time.
So funny. So funny.
Such a farce. It's, old school, in the door, out the door, step on the toe. Who is that? What is that?
Right.
Why are you? Oh my. And literally all you have is like a list of names at one point, or the word okay over and over again. And it's hysterical.
Yeah. And it just has a lot of quoted lines with no one saying it, without it saying, clearly delineating who is saying what. Just, who's that? Who's that? Ginny? Hermione? What are you doing? I was looking for Ron. Come in, sit down. Not here, said Harry hurriedly. I'm here. Ouch, said Neville. Quiet, said a hoarse voice suddenly.
And there was even more before that. Sorry, ouch. Oh, sorry, Harry, is that you? What happened? No idea. Sit down. Like, it just goes on. And on
hello,
and on.
Neville.
I just wish there were more doors that they could be coming in and out of. That's the only thing missing.
Right, and the mystery machine. Yeah, that was really funny.
That moment.
So after that, the lights. Yeah, the lights are out. The Dementors are on the train. And my first thought was Lupin's hand of fire. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
So it says, Professor Lupin appeared to have woken up at last. Harry could hear movements in his corner. None of them spoke. There was a soft crackling noise, and a shivering light filled the compartment. Professor Lupin appeared to be holding a handful of flames. They illuminated his tired gray face, but his eyes looked alert and wary.
I wonder if they're the same type of blue flames that Hermione used to be able to conjure.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure she probably still can.
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't seen magic where someone can just hold flames, which I guess maybe the blue flames you could, because they do say that they're non-incendiary. They don't burn through. They're basically everlasting fire kind of thing.
Right.
So I just thought that was interesting that we haven't seen anything like that, and all of a sudden this brand new guy can do this really cool, visually, intriguing type of magic right in your face.
Yep. So
do you have any other thoughts on the actual Dementor attack?
No, because my next thought is really about the Dementor recovery program.
Okay.
And that it's chocolate. A huge fan of chocolate.
Big fan of chocolate.
I just think it's funny. Lupin has to tell Harry 3 different times as he's going in and out of the compartment to eat the chocolate. It's not poisoned. You can eat it.
Right.
I like the not listening that Harry is doing in that moment.
Yeah, he's definitely either kind of distracted in hero mode, or kind of the opposite here. He's not used to being the one that can't handle something. He's usually the one leading. This is a really odd mental spot for him, being the one who's suffering and being taken care of. He always gets hurt, but it's never out of his control, if that really makes sense.
Yes, it does.
So yeah, I find this whole scene very interesting for Harry's character.
Okay.
And then Lupin is trying to convince him to eat the chocolate, and Harry, says, basically the narrator speaks to himself and says, Harry didn't ask how Professor Lupin knew his name. It's because you're Harry Potter. Come on.
Right.
Of anybody, you're the one he's going to know. Exactly. He's not looking at her luggage and saying, "Oh, Hermione Granger." No, you're knowable.
Star. I got you.
You walked into Leaky Cauldron 2 years ago. Everyone knew your name.
Yep.
If the scar
this is
fits.
Not brand new information.
Right.
But then we get to Hogwarts finally,
and we see horseless stagecoaches.
That's the first time we've seen those. Yeah.
I think they were mentioned book 1, they took the boats. Book 2, they flew right in. Mm-hmm. So yes, we see horseless stagecoaches for the first time here. And maybe that should have been a Magicabulary, but not really. It's more of just a description of something.
Right. I don't really care why McGonagall wants to see you. Anytime you get called to McGonagall's office, it's intimidating.
Yeah, I love how defensive he is. And she calls him out and is like, "Don't need to worry. Like, it's not a big deal. Relax, bro."
Doesn't matter.
I know.
Doesn't matter. Because it's like when I get a call from even my principal, my boss, not even like, I'm not a kid, I'm not getting in trouble, but it's my boss. She's like,
what's going on?
Yeah. Like, she's like, "Hey, I need to talk to you for just a second." I'm like, "Oh God, what'd I do? What'd I forget? Who did I make mad? What did I do?" And usually it's like, "Can you help out so-and-so? Or can you give me something and help me out with this?" And it's like, oh, it's so scary. It's like, "Oh my God, I get fired? What did I do? And I'm a grown woman who does a reasonably adequate job, and I'm probably fine. Doesn't matter. It's that same panic every time."
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. And McGonagall definitely has that stern presence behind her that definitely lends itself to that.
Way more than getting called to Dumbledore's office.
Oh, yeah, because we already know that he's just kind of a silly guy overall. He's witty, and she's a lot more...
she's hardcore, man.
Yeah, she's hardcore. And then we have, Harry in McGonagall's office, and Madame Pomfrey comes in, and she's saying, "Oh, he won't be the first, he's not going to be the last one to faint. It's harder on the students who are already delicate." And Harry's like, "I'm not delicate." Of course you're not. It's so funny. I think that's such a good line. Of course you're not.
Well, I feel like it's such something a nurse of middle school and high school would say.
Exactly.
Because yes, dear, you're fine. You're a very
think what you want. That's
tough
cool.
little boy. I'm so proud of you. Good job.
Exactly.
Good job taking your medicine, right? You're amazing.
Yeah, you took that medicine better than anyone else I've ever seen take it. Keep it up.
I'm so proud of you.
And then she, clearly seems to respect or is impressed by Lupin's already having delivered the chocolate to Harry. And so I really liked that scene as well.
I liked that line. I'm trying to find it because... Oh, here it is. So she goes, "Did he now?" said Madame Pomfrey approvingly. "So we finally got a defense against the dark arts teacher who knows his remedies." Like, oh, look, somebody who might be competent at his position.
Right. Which is good. It's a good foot, I like to see maybe someone who's not worthless in the defense against dark arts position take up the helm.
True.
You've been 0 for 2 to this point. "Oh dear, we've missed the sorting," Hermione says.
Aww.
It's 2 in a row we've now not seen. I don't know.
We've really only seen Harry's.
We've seen Harry's, and that's it.
And it's really kind of hard to get an idea of the sorting. I mean, the first book does a really good job of explaining it, but we're getting it from the point of view of somebody who has no idea what's going on. I would love to see one at some point from the perspective of a wizened older student.
Right. Yeah. Someone who's been there, who's been around the bend.
Right. So, Professor Kettleburn.
Yeah.
The quote says, "Well, I'm sorry to tell you that Professor Kettleburn, our Care of Magical Creatures teacher, retired at the end of last year in order to enjoy more time with his remaining limbs."
Remaining limbs. That's dedication right there.
That is a line that has stuck out to me since the very first time I read this.
Oh, definitely. That might be in the contention for one of the best lines in this book. I mean, easily.
I would really like to know how many limbs he has remaining.
Plus more than one. It's multiple remaining limbs.
Right. But it's remaining, so it's not all 4.
Right. And they might not even be, whole. He could have an arm down to the elbow. That's still a limb, right? He's not saying a full arm. He could have lost part of his arm.
Right. And I want to know what happened to him. I want to know how he was injured. I would like to know. Professor Kettleburn has always intrigued me as a person I would like to know more about. Where does one retire to after leaving Hogwarts? We have not heard of anybody retiring before. I am intrigued by the elusive Professor Kettleburn.
Yeah, well, we've had 2 other teachers retire while we've gone along in the first 2 books. One died. And one lost his mind, and we don't know where he's at. I
saying. Like, every time a teacher is no longer with the school, it is for an extenuating circumstance. But for somebody to actually make a whole career at Hogwarts and then be able to retire by choice, this is unusual.
Yeah, I like to see that Professor Kettleburn is able to go out under his own steam. I was going to say under his own 2 feet, but we can't say that that's entirely accurate.
Oh, that's so bad. Yeah, no, definitely not.
So we then... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So then we have the introduction of our new teachers. We have 2 new teachers, surprisingly enough. There's not only Professor R.J. Lupin, who's taking over Defense Against the Dark Arts, but Hagrid. Rubeus Hagrid is taking over care of magical creatures. What a day for him. I'm happy for him. How about a clap for Hagrid?
I'm going to do a digital high five. There you go. Okay. Here's my concern, though. I'm very happy for Hagrid, but I've always worried about this. Within that same chapter, there was a line where they were describing Hagrid because, we have to introduce the characters.
Right.
And the line says, Ron, Harry, and Hermione were over after the end of the feast, ran over to Hagrid to congratulate him. And the line says, they knew how much being made a teacher would mean to him. Hagrid wasn't a fully qualified wizard. He had been expelled from Hogwarts in his 3rd year for a crime he had not committed. It had been Harry, Ron, and Hermione who had cleared Hagrid's name last year. But I've always focused on the fact that he wasn't a fully qualified wizard. And I get he's had his entire lifetime, 50 years or whatever, of raising and being the gamekeeper and dealing with animals. So he's very knowledgeable in that area, but he's not a fully qualified wizard. Doesn't that feel like something we should maybe take care of for him?
Yeah, maybe he should be able to take night classes and get his wand, back. That seems like a reasonable...
GED, right?
Right, yeah. And after the fact, hey, we realized it didn't work out the first time, but there is still a continuing education option for you.
Right. Like, he should be able to go buy a new wand.
I think so, I think that'd be fair. Like, hey, or maybe if somehow Ollivander, because Hagrid still has the pieces of his wand, we're led to believe.
Shh, don't tell. It's a secret.
If Ollivander, since his name is cleared, he should be able to have his wand back if it's able to be fixed. Like, that'd be really neat.
I don't know, because look at what happened with Ron's wand last year.
But they also didn't take it to Ollivander to see. Go to the person who does that.
All right, sounds good. It does not surprise me, however, that Hagrid, as a teacher, his first act of teacherness would be to assign a biting book.
Yeah, it fits. It makes sense. He's the one that would do that.
Truth. Oh, Hagrid.
My only remaining question right now is why does Snape just seem to hate so many people, and we have no reason to know why? Like, it reads as... Oh, sorry. I thought I had it highlighted. Oh. Look at Snape, Ron hissed in Harry's ear. Professor Snape, the potions master, was staring along the staff table at Professor Lupin. It was common knowledge that Snape wanted the Defense Against the Dark Arts job, but even Harry, who hated Snape, was startled at the expression twisting his thin, sallow face. It was beyond anger. It was loathing. Harry knew the expression only too well. It was the look Snape wore every time he set eyes on Harry. Like, what's the deal, man? Like, can you just relax and be happy the guy's made it here? Like, it seems like it's more than a jealousy thing. Like, I don't know. What do you think on that?
I think Snape is just like kind of I'm trying to find a child-friendly appropriate word.
Yeah.
Kind of a jerk, and maybe he doesn't like the look of Lupin's shabby clothes, and maybe he was on the interview panel and didn't. That
wasn't his choice.
Right. Or he didn't get an interview, or he did get an interview and they still went with the other guy. I think I agree it's maybe a little deeper than just the normal, you got the job I wanted, but we have no indication of why other than Snape's just a jerk.
Yeah, I agree. And
I do think it's surprising that he might hate somebody more than he hates Harry.
It seems comparable, at least.
Right.
I don't know. You got any final thoughts on this before we start asking some questions?
I have one more. At the very end of the chapter, we get
this is something I forgot about.
The new password is Fortuna Major. And the very next line is, said Neville Longbottom sadly. He always had trouble remembering the passwords. Okay, I have an issue with this 2-sentence paragraph. Number 1, you don't need to call him Neville Longbottom. You can just call him Neville because we ran into him now.
He's been Neville since book 1.
Well, and even in this book, we ran into him in Diagon Alley. He literally ran into them in the compartment out on the train. Neville was telling Draco about Harry fainting. Neville has been around already in this book.
He is firmly re-established and reintroduced. We know who he is.
Stop full naming him.
Right.
Second, we get it. He's forgetful. He is a round-faced, forgetful boy. How many more ways do you need to say it? You could just say, "Oh no," said Neville sadly. That's all you needed, because we would have all gotten it.
Or even say, give him an extra line. "Oh no, I'll never remember that." I'm okay with that. The narrator talking about, I think, is the issue. Like, we know the narrator knows this. And the narrator told us. Let Neville start.
The narrator knows this.
Like,
we know this. The narrator knows that we know this. You know that I know that we know that you know that we know this.
We know it.
We're good, okay? Yeah, I'm a little frustrated by that, but it's okay. It's okay.
Staying positive.
Right. All right, so I have one more thing for you, Luke.
All right.
I have 5 burning questions.
Oh, let's hear them.
Number 1, how did the Shrieking Shack become one of the most haunted buildings in Britain?
Ooh, we don't know a whole lot about it, but it is in the only non-Muggle town in Britain. So maybe magical ghosts are extra haunting? I don't know. But I mean, that clearly seems to mean that does most haunted building mean highest concentration of paranormal activity, most dangerously haunted? Because we've seen 20 plus ghosts in Hogwarts.
Right.
If this is just a shack, like that means there has to be more than 20, or is it a ghost per square foot? You know what I mean? It's the concentration, the density, the paranormal density. I don't know.
If you have 20 ghosts per square foot and that only has a square footage of, I don't know, say 40 square feet or 60 square feet, or even 100 square feet, Hogwarts has to have what? A square footage of 10,000?
Yeah, I mean, lots. Yeah.
So 20 ghosts, 100 square feet is going to feel a lot different than 20 ghosts in 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
My take on it was a little different. I thought it was more concentration of like deadly occurrences.
Okay.
So the ghosts at Hogwarts, sans the Bloody Baron, because that guy creeps me out. But Nearly Headless Nick seems fairly decent, and the Fat Friar seems very friendly, and Moaning Myrtle is whiny but not scary. For the most part, their ghosts are harmless ghosts. I wonder if the Shrieking Shack is inhabited by, I can't use the word deadly because they're already dead, and I don't know if a ghost can hurt a person, but definitely scarier and more intimidating collection of ghosts. Like in my head, I'm like, I wonder if this is a site of like a huge brawl where everybody died, in a bloody
some kind of massacre.
Right, or like an OK Corral kind of a thing.
Right.
With wands.
So you just hit on something that made me think of my next thought. And so I will say my next thought. Hogsmeade seems to be... That's how conversation works.
Oh, God.
So Hogsmeade seems to be pretty close to Hogwarts. I wonder if there's a way to banish more frightening or intimidating ghosts from Hogwarts. And the Shrieking Shack is just where they put them. You know what I mean? Like, that's where, like, oh, you're a little too much for the kids at Hogwarts. So we're gonna, banish you or damn you to the Shrieking Shack just down the road. You can go hang out there and play with those guys, but you're not welcome here. And maybe that's something the Bloody Baron is in charge of. Maybe he's that intimidating force that forces all of them out. I don't know.
Because you got to have one intimidating guy still there.
Yeah, so you got to have someone carry that rod.
That's right. All right, ready for question number 2?
I am.
Why is a teacher on the train?
I don't know. It's the first time we've seen any teacher on the train. It's the first time we've seen any adult on the train other than the witch with the snack cart, And we've heard of the conductor or the engine driver, I think is what Lupin calls him. And
right.
I think it's odd. It seems very odd to me as to why he's there. And it seems even more odd that he's sleeping on the train.
Right.
Like, what's that all about? I don't know. Is he similar to what you were getting at with Florian Fortescue being kind of put in charge of security of Harry without Harry knowing about it kind of thing? I think that's definitely possible.
I agree. I never thought about it that way, but I like that idea. So would he be fake sleeping that whole time? And how would he know Harry would end up in the same compartment?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I definitely don't know. But maybe once Harry went in there, he was like, "Oh, I'll just keep acting like I'm asleep." But he seemed like he was actually asleep, or he was pretty rude for not answering Hermione. I don't know. We'll see.
Either way, I don't know either.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Question 3. When the Dementors come and Harry does a weird passing out thingy, he hears screams. But when he comes back to, no one else heard screams. Where are the screams?
So maybe there's a screaming snake on the train. Snakes on trains. That's my guess.
Better than snakes on planes.
Exactly. But I mean, clearly last year he was hearing voices that only he could hear, and it was a snake. So using the evidence at hand, there's a screaming snake on a train.
Great. Yuck.
In the luggage cart, in the luggage rails.
Jeez. Okay. Question 4. What qualities in the chocolate make it a restorative from a Dementor encounter?
Happiness. It's just the happiness that they bake into chocolate, because that's what chocolate's made out of. It is happiness made whole and solid, and it's wonderful.
Done. I'm a big fan. Chocolate is wonderful. You know, it's even better. Chocolate mixed with peanut butter.
Just chocolate. I like peanut butter mixed with chocolate, but just chocolate. I'll take that over anything. Yep.
Okay. Which means that I should always have chocolate with me.
Exactly. You know, that's well said.
Except that I don't think I could actually keep the chocolate with me. Most likely it would be consumed.
Yeah, maybe if you get like liquefied chocolate and get it in a Camelback, you know, like one of those backpacks with a straw, you can just like take hits of it every once in a while.
Right. Just to prepare.
Yeah. I'm just, keeping my Dementor defense up. That's all I'm doing.
Like a daily vitamin.
Yeah, exactly. Just an hourly vitamin of one Hershey milk chocolate bar. Yeah, every hour.
I feel like this is a new trend.
Okay. All right. Well, you can get your Hershey's chocolate bars from thepodcastthat.com.
No, you actually can't.
No, you can't.
But if you are a Herd fan.
Yeah. We're not sponsored by them yet, but if you know anyone there, give them our phone number.
Right. All right. Question number 5. Why haven't we seen any horseless carriages before now?
Well, I know we kind of talked on this already as to this is the first time that we've seen them. And the first book, they took the kind of scenic route, the driving with dad route through the forest, kind of walk to the boats over the lake to get the full, hey, really neat view of the castle. So that makes a whole lot of sense why we didn't see it then. Book 2, they fly into the car, so they missed a lot of stuff because of that. But like,
I would like to contend these points. Ready?
Go for it.
So in book 1, yes, they took the boats to the castle. They also loaded back into the boats on the way home from the castle. So boats both ways.
No, they
when
didn't.
They entered and when they left. Yes, they did.
When they leave the castle to go home?
Yep. In the book, it says they loaded back into the boats.
Okay.
Do you need to pull this out?
I don't remember that at all. At the end of book 1, they take
the end of book 1. It's like a 2, 3, 4 word thing.
God damn.
What?
My book was being stupid.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, so they get their letters saying, warning them not to use magic over the holidays. I always hope they'll forget to give us these, said Fred Weasley sadly. Hagrid was there to take them down to the fleet of boats that sailed across the lake. They were boarding the Hogwarts Express.
So, they took the boats back in book 1. In book 2, they flew a car. How did they get at the end of the year from the castle to the train?
Yeah, that's definitely...
Because only first years take the boats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
always bothered me.
Yeah, no, and without having seen that boat comment that you just pointed me to, I definitely don't remember that because it is just like a 3-word thing.
Right.
So I'm pretty surprised by that, but that's a good question. How did they get back after year 2? They have to get
back to the train station. It's not close.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we don't really know how close it is, but
you have to take a carriage there or a boat. I mean, I assume you could walk, but maybe they walked.
Yeah.
How do they have their trunks and stuff transported?
Right. It's the moving of the trunks that makes walking the issue.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good point. I don't know. Basically, the answer is JK came up with it in book 3.
Yeah. Well, exactly. It's just always stood out to me as something like that. So.
Yeah, which is fine, and I don't have a problem with that. But yeah, that's a good. Him being so surprised right now is a little surprising to us who have read it over and over. Again, this is something I hadn't thought about, but that's definitely a good question.
Yes. All right, Luke, what was your favorite line?
So my favorite line, and we'd kind of already touched on this before during your notes, but it's just that good. It's worth revisiting, and it's, well, I am sorry to tell you that Professor Kettleburn, our Care of Magical Creatures teacher, retired at the end of last year in order to enjoy more time with his remaining limbs. It's so funny. It's definitely one that has always stuck with me for sure. Like, I know I don't want to beat the dead horse anymore, but it's so funny. How many limbs does he have left? I hope we get a chance to meet him at some point at a retirement party, or some kind of him coming back just as a emeritus professor for something here or
for
there.
Just a class, just one day.
Yeah, we'll
That'd
see.
be awesome.
All right, what was your favorite line?
I have 3. It was very difficult.
It was honestly very difficult.
One of them wasn't the one you picked, because at that point I had already had 3. I'm like, well, I can't pick that. I can't pick anymore.
Yeah, and I see one that I was on the fence of picking for sure.
So I'm going to say probably that one first, because we already talked about it. This is definitely just more of an honorable mention and not a favorite. It's, "I'm not delicate," said Harry crossly. "Of course you're not," said Madame Pomfrey absent-mindedly. That's just funny.
The absent-mindedly thing is what makes it so good. It's yeah, sure, okay.
There, dear. So I really like that one. Another one that I really like is, as per usual for me, Aaronism.
Who's surprised?
I really feel like, and I honestly, before we started doing the podcast, I really never thought of Ron as my favorite character, but I'm really kind of thinking maybe he is, simply because he's funny, or maybe he's just my favorite at this time in my life and where I am with how I'm viewing the world currently. Right. He's the funniest to me in the moment. But it's the line that says, "I suppose he is asleep," said Ron quietly as the witch slid the compartment door closed. "I mean, he hasn't died, has he?" We'll have some dead grown-up in our compartment with us. We're all cool with him being here.
Right. No, he's breathing, they go on to say. But
right.
Yeah, it's just such a, hey, let's talk about the obvious question here. Thanks, Ron.
But most people are like, hey, he's okay, right? No, Ron's like, he's not dead, is he? And I feel like that's kind of how I approach the world anyway. I've been finding a lot of similarities between myself and Ron in this particular read through. I liked that one. But my favorite line, it's very similar. It's a very overall theme for our protagonist here, and it's Harry. And he says, if somebody says, "Well, don't go looking for trouble, Harry." "I don't go looking for trouble," said Harry, nettled. "Trouble usually finds me."
And that's definitely true, it seems.
Right. It's a little sad and scary, and probably not likely to change.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So who is your chapter MVP?
I had a hard time with this one because there were a lot of characters, and then I saw your honorable mention.
Oh, go for it.
I didn't want to steal it, but I'm going to steal it because I truly think that Lupin was the MVP of this chapter. First of all, for sleeping through all the crazy kid talk on the train. That's impressive. I also think that the way he handled the Dementor attack, he told the Dementor to go away. Dementor didn't listen. He attacked the Dementor and made him go away. Look at that. Defending against dark arts right there. Totally qualified for his job. He knew about the chocolate. He impressed Madame Pomfrey. I thought he did a lot of good things in a chapter where there wasn't a huge amount of events other than just the Dementor attack. He definitely stood out as the protector of children. I like that.
Mm-hmm. My honorable mention is going to be Madame Pomfrey, mainly for that one line of just she gives Lupin props, for she seems to be impressed by him, at least his doing what he needs to be doing, and that's good to see. But then, she tells Harry what he needs to hear, and even though it's kind of silly, and it's just very motherly of her, which is what her role seems to be. Right. And it's just nice to see that she gets a little bit of a spotlight. So, real quick, do you have any overall final thoughts on this chapter?
It was long. I kept waiting for it to be over, thinking, oh, that's the end of this, because these big things happened, and then more things happened. So it was good, just long. How about you?
The form of it seems very, very, very similar to the first 2 traveling to Hogwarts chapters that we've had in the other 2 books. This one goes, I think book 2 does this as well. It goes pretty much all the way from the Weasley's house all the way to the dormitory, and then, hey, let's start classes tomorrow. Book 1, they split it up because of the sorting and the traveling. So that was 2 chapters, but it gets to the same overall start and end points. This one, it does a lot like book 2. It goes from Diagon Alley all the way to basically Harry's bed. And I like that. I think it does make it's a huge chapter, but it's just constantly like, let's just move. Let's reintroduce a whole bunch of people and let's get from A to B. And there's a lot of stuff in between.
Which is funny because that's what a train does.
Right.
I mean, and not to be cheesy about it, but it is a journey that we're going on in this chapter to get from A to B.
Yeah. And I just like that we're starting to see that parallel between that trip. Even if it's taking a flying car, it's still that journey from A to B. That's what this portion of the book seems to be.
Okay. I think that wraps us up for today.
I agree.
So all of our legion of listeners out there, I would love it if you would find us on Twitter at Not Named Podcast. We are commencing monthly Twitter contests where if you retweet or comment on the tweet, you can win a prize. So stay tuned for when that comes up randomly throughout each month. If you have any comments or questions, we are in particular this book looking for people to give us your theories about these chapters, anything you agree with us on, any questions that you have that we can clarify for you, anything you disagree with us on. Please send us an email at thepodcastthat@gmail.com. Reference the episode and chapter that you're wanting to talk about, and we would be glad to put you in our pool to choose from for our Spotlight listener question. Spotlight listener questions will come on every 5-chap recap. So send us those questions quick so we can get it in for next week's 5-chap recap episode.
Perfect.
No, I was just going to say, we also have a website that if you want to go back and re-listen to any of this show or any of our family of podcasts, including our newest show, the podcast that floats down here, you can find us at thepodcastthat.com.
Subscribe, rate, like us on iTunes and all of those fun places like YouTube as well. Real simple. We're everywhere, unfortunately, at times. But special thanks goes out to our imaginary listener, Sam, for providing our summary this chapter. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it.
Join us next week when we do our 5-chap recap of 1 through 5.
Until then, stay imaginary.
Thanks.